For many, Brussels is a symbol of hope and progress, a beacon of light and hope in a troubled world. But for others, it is a place of darkness, corruption, danger and anger. Today, the city is brought to a standstill. Thousands of farmers have taken to the streets, protesting against the carbon agreement and strict regulations from Europe that have left them feeling uncertain about their future. The farmers have come from all corners of the country to make their voices heard. They know that their livelihoods are at stake, their passion for their craft, and they are not willing to go down without a fight. Now, what is the problem exactly? Europe has established regulations mandating the reduction of carbon and ammonia emissions, originating from both agricultural and industrial activities, aiming to lower the impact on nature reserves. When animal feces and urine mix, you get ammonia. These emissions rise and fall and make the ground rich in nutrients. Manure from farms can form ammonia through a process called aminification. This process occurs when the bacteria that are present in manure break down the nitrogen-containing compounds, such as urea, found in urine and feces. The bacteria convert the nitrogen in these compounds into ammonia. Ammonia can react with other pollutants in the atmosphere to form acid rain, which can have harmful effects on ecosystems. Carbon is an essential element in nature as it serves as a primary source of nutrition for plants. However, in excessive amounts can result in negative consequences. When plants, such as nettles, brambles, and certain grasses, receive too many nutrients, they tend to grow more quickly than other species, thereby dominating the landscape. And plants who aren't well suited against carbon or ammonia won't grow properly. This can lead to a reduction in biodiversity since certain insects and animals rely on specific types of terrain to thrive. Ultimately, this disrupts the ecosystem and causes a decline in biodiversity. The goal is to reduce these emissions by half by the year 2030. It's worth noting that Belgium is currently developing additional regulations to enhance the quality of both ground and surface water. These measures will strictly govern the areas where farmers can use manure to fertilize the land, and prohibiting the use in locations with poor water quality. In addition, a harvesting rule will prevent farmers from collecting crops beyond a specific date. As a result, the agricultural sector is subject to a constant flow of new rules and regulations. Now, regarding the carbon agreement, when you expel too much, you will receive a report containing a color: green, orange or red, and if you are red, you are going to be forced to shut down. Farmers are furious, angry and sad. It's no surprise that many people feel as though their future has been taken away, and young farmers in particular may feel there is no viable path ahead for them. And because Europe sets these regulations, if we don't reduce emissions, we won't be able to get new permits for anything like we have seen in the Netherlands. The courts have invalidated multiple permits related to agriculture, energy and traffic, causing significant uncertainty regarding the issuance of permits for future projects. The only viable solution to this issue is the establishment of a comprehensive and ambitious carbon agreement, complete with a well-defined set of regulations. Such an agreement would prevent a complete halt to the issuance of permits. The carbon agreement has been a dominant issue in Belgian politics for over 2 years, with the parties only reaching a consensus last year. Despite this, the CD&V backpedaled and wanted more changes to the agreement, not to mention 20,000 objections filed against it by farmers and regular people. However, there are still strong disagreements over the carbon agreement. The CD&V is seeking clear guarantees that young farmers will have opportunities to start their own businesses in the next decade and have the ability to grow or expand a bit. Additionally, they want the agreement to allow farmers to emit as much carbon as industries. Finally, they are advocating for emission rights from closed farms to be transferred to new farmers rather than being lost. Even though they are close to getting an agreement, these are some serious breaking points. Belgian farmers, like farmers in many other countries, are angry about the carbon agreement because they believe that it unfairly targets them and places a disproportionate burden on them. While the industry isn't targeted as strongly, as government officials claim that carbon from industry is not as damaging as carbon coming from farming. The carbon agreement, which is part of the larger effort to combat climate change, is designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and encourage more sustainable practices across all industries. However, farmers argue that they are being unfairly treated by the agreement because their industry is already highly regulated and heavily dependent on fossil fuels and fertilizers. Many farmers rely on tractors, irrigation systems, and other machinery that require fuel, and reducing their carbon footprint is not as simple as switching to renewable energy sources. In addition, farmers argue that the carbon agreement places an unjust financial burden on them. The costs of implementing more sustainable practices, such as reducing fertilizer use or switching to more efficient machinery, can be high, and farmers may not have the financial resources to make these changes without significant government support. However, as a result of the carbon agreement and other environmental regulations, some farmers are now facing forced shutdowns, reductions in animal stock, or other measures that will significantly impact their bottom line. For these farmers, the investments they made in new equipment and expanded operations are now potentially wasted, and stricter regulations are now forcing them to, once again, invest heavily to comply with the regulations. It's important to note that new, stricter regulations may be on the horizon, which could require significant investment once again. It's difficult to predict what the future holds. Will they be forced to invest again in the next 5 to 10 years? In addition to competition from the global market, Belgian farmers have also faced pressure from retailers who demand high-quality products at low prices. In order to meet these demands, farmers had to invest in new equipment and technology to improve the quality of their products and increase their efficiency. This has put pressure on Belgian farmers to reduce their costs and increase their animal count. However, holding more animals counteracts the efforts they made to reduce emissions. Thereby, they are still in the same sinking ship. This may or may not have been pushed by government policies, but farming on a bigger scale wasn't discouraged either. By increasing the scale of their business, they reduced their production costs. Reducing the number of animals held, as required by the carbon agreement, could lead to bankruptcy for farmers, unless the retail industry is willing to pay more for their products. However, due to the global market, the industry may simply import products from countries where they can obtain a better price. Having more animals in a farm can counteract the investments made to lower carbon emissions in several ways. One of the primary sources of greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture comes from the digestive processes of livestock. Cows, pigs, and other animals produce methane as a byproduct of digestion, although it is true that Belgium exports significantly more livestock than it consumes domestically. Reducing these exports may not address our concerns about environmental regulations, animal welfare, and fraud. If we were to reduce our exports, other farms in different countries could potentially increase their production to make up for the loss in supply. However, these farms may not necessarily adhere to the same strict standards and regulations that Belgian farms do, which could potentially result in negative environmental and animal welfare impacts, as well as the potential for fraudulent practices. Despite investing heavily in carbon-reducing measures, farmers are also struggling to survive in a market where the retail industry demands high-quality products at the lowest possible price. To remain competitive in the global market, farmers have had to increase their scale of production to make a living. This often requires a business plan that determines the number of animals to keep in order to be able to pay back the investments made in carbon-reducing measures. Due to the recent, more strict measures, many farmers are finding it difficult to comply. This is especially challenging for those who are already constrained by their current investments. They are unable to secure additional loans, and the new regulations prevent them from expanding their operations to achieve economic viability. Decreasing livestock to meet the regulatory requirements would make it impossible for them to repay their previous investments. The need to expand operations and invest in new technology has put a financial strain on many Belgian farmers, who may have had to take out additional loans or invest heavily in order to keep up with European environmental demands. While some already had major work done to lower the emissions, but it proved to be inadequate. This has also led to a concentration of farms, with larger, more industrialized operations becoming increasingly common while smaller, family-owned farms struggle to compete. To accommodate farmers who are being forced to quit or are unable to make further investments, buyout options are being offered. Many farmers are struggling and feel like they are drowning with no clear way out. The question remains whether the buyout options will provide adequate compensation for their debts and lost investments. Additionally, some farmers are hesitant to give up their livelihoods, which have been passed down through generations. The minister believes that these measures will make a significant difference in farming the carbon agreement. Belgium's efforts to achieve its carbon reduction targets are complicated by the need to reduce emissions from farms, industry, and traffic, which are already challenging tasks. However, the country's political divisions have further exacerbated these challenges. While some parties are willing to give in on certain parts, others aren't so keen to do so. With elections in the back of their mind, they are not willing to damage themselves by getting an agreement that doesn't fully satisfy their party members.